Thank you for joining us with our midday devotional. I'm Brother Bruce McClure, the local minister at the Prince George's Church of Christ, and we're located at 7800 Central Avenue in Landover, Maryland. This week, we will focus our devotional time to the topic adapting to change. And although that is a very simplistic topic, it is probably one of the more challenging topics that we would have discussed over the past 18 to 20 months. Because adapting to change is a very, very challenging feat. And it is sometimes difficult for individuals such as myself to readily move into a mindset that is ready to receive the change that is really better for us, because many times in change we're putting something behind us or we're picking up something new that is going to bless us moving forward. In case you're wondering about the design, this is actually a butterfly that is actually going through metamorphosis. Uh, this is the larva, this is the shell change, and this is the beautiful results of that. But this is an adaptation process and moving from one state into another state. And yet, if we can allow the process to take place, it is typically for the best. So stay with us the entire week, accept our invitation to be on board for our devotion Monday through Friday of this week. And also, I would encourage you to invite others to participate as your guest. This month, September, is also Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And as I mentioned on yesterday, throughout the week, I will be giving you little tidbits from various sources that points up how important it is for us to be self-aware of the broad spectrum in which we can help when people are in danger or in emotional, mental distress. Uh, if you are in crises, you can always dial 800 273 TALK or 800 273 8255, and someone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week will live answer that call. Uh, just three ideas for suicide before we go into our lesson for today. Suicide is defined as death that's caused by self directed injurious behavior with the intent to die as a result of the behavior. Uh, when it is self directed injurious behavior that causes death because that was the intent of the action, that is suicide. Now, a suicide attempt, on the other hand, is a non fatal, self directed, potentially injurious behavior with the intent to die as a result of the behavior. Now, just because there was no injury does not mean there was no attempt. Uh, and then suicidal ideation refers to thinking about it, considering it, or planning suicide, but there was not an attempt to make it happen. So, suicide, the act, suicide attempt is the act, but it was non fatal. And then suicide ideation is just the thought. Uh, and we have to do safety assessments, especially when there's ideation. If there's an attempt, we do hospitalization. to put them in some type restricted setting in order to get immediate help for their attempts. Well, let's define change. What is change? If we're going to adapt to something, what are we adapting to? Change simply means to replace with something else, to become different than what we are or the status quo. It's an alteration, it's a redoing, it's a shifting and adjusting, a transformation. Uh, so, change, if you notice, are actions, not just thoughts, but actions. To replace something requires activity. To become different requires the expenditure of energy. An alteration, you've got to change, you've got to modify, redoing it, you've got to break it down and put it back together again. So change requires participation from the individual in which change needs to happen. That's very, very important as we set up the baseline for our study for the week. Uh, the fight for maintaining what is off what is often what often leads to the fight for change. Uh, I was doing several other things this morning as I was putting this together, so it's a little bit wordy. But there is a fight for maintaining what is often done that leads to the fight for change. In other words, what I'm already doing, I will fight to maintain that. And that's going to lead to a more intense fight for change. The more I really want to change and yet I really don't want to change, there's a conflict. And therein is a lot of the frustration, especially when the outside locus of control, other people, want an individual who only has the control of their own internal locus of control, is resisting it. In a January 3rd, 2014 article that was published by Cohen and Sherman, both at Stanford University, at Stanford, and California's Department of Psychological and Brain Science at the University of California at Santa Barbara, the conclusion was reached that in people's quest to maintain their personal self-integrity, events are often triggered that causes stress and a self-protective the conclusion was reached that in people's quest to maintain their personal self integrity, in other words, have you heard people say, I don't need to change? There's nothing wrong with the way I think. There's nothing wrong with the way I behave. There's nothing wrong with my response to people. But when people reach that emphatic, closed door opinion of themselves, what they are attempting to do is to maintain self integrity because their self integrity centers around whatever they believe is right. It doesn't have to be right, but in their mind, that's what their self worth is built into. So events are triggered that causes stress and self-protective defensive barriers uh, that in actuality can impede performance and growth. In other words, when somebody tries to inject something into the equation to change that person sees that as an attack on his or her integrity. You see that so much in politics. You see that in family relationships. You see that in the world of work and in the field of mental health. We even see it. In the sphere of Bible study, God's people study, we see it. But when you compound that with a lot of other issues, where there are comorbid issues, things that go along with it, mental health issues, social issues, financial issues, struggles with religion, and you put all of those factors together, people feel like, well, you are attacking me. So therefore, you are attacking my integrity. And those type processors, which are wrong, are going to lead to a fight resisting change. And the metamorphic process for the better can really be impeded. The performance for the better can slow down. The growth for the better can slow down because an individual who sees it as you are attacking me. See, they see that from outside, the locus of control being the external. And the individuals external are simply trying to get inside to help the individual understand clear what their potential is if they will only change. Complacent self-righteousness makes change very difficult. Doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter the walk of life. One of the texts that I thought about for this was Luke 18, beginning at verse number 14. We'll do that tomorrow. Because when you look at Luke 18, beginning at verse number 10, it's an amazing, phenomenal illustration of how self-righteousness can interfere with a person self-analyzing. Two men went up into the temple to pray. The one a Pharisee and the other a publican. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself. God, I thank you that I'm not as other men are, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as that publican. I fast twice in a week and I give tithes of all that I possess. Do you see the self-righteousness? When people are self-righteous, they typically are complacent, which means they feel they're fine just like they are. And when people are self-righteous and are complacent, change is difficult because they don't see anything to change. We had a president named 45, saw no need to change. Nothing. I don't see a need to ask God for forgiveness for anything. That was self-righteousness. That individual was complacent and will probably, in all likelihood, never change. Look at this arrogancy. The Pharisee stood up and prayed thus with himself, the internal locus. He could only see inside himself that everything was fine. And he approaches God with an arrogancy, a self-assurance. God, I thank you that I'm not as other men are. See, he's locked himself inside of himself, but he's become the judge, the jury, and the executioner of everyone outside of himself. And then he points to the tax gatherer, the publican. I fast twice in a week. I give tithes of all I have. And because of that, and he being a Pharisee, he says, I have nothing to change in my life. Everything is fine. But look at the publican. The publican standing afar off would not lift up so much as his eyes to heaven. He says, Father, I'm not even worthy to look up to where your throne is. But he beat his chest, an indicator of shame, an indicator of helplessness, an indicator of a cry for help, with a clarity that I'm broken and I need to change. But in my brokenness, I'm not able to do it without you, Lord. And he said, because of his understanding of his condition, God, just be merciful to me. I'm a sinner. He's willing to change. He's crying out for change. He's saying to the Father, every day I'm attempting to change. But the self-righteous one, change is a struggle, because you've got to first be willing to accept the fact that I do need to change. I want to encourage you to come and be a part of the class every day this week, because it will bless you, and in turn, you can bless other people. This lesson is a challenging lesson. It's a challenging lesson for me personally, because every day that we wake up, it's an opportunity to modify something that is within us. Let me conclude the class the way we started it. This is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. I put this slide up on yesterday, so each day I will add another slide to it. If there's a person in crisis in our audience today, you can call 800-273-8255. And you can call that number 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And these are some signs to watch for in terms of, are people going through something where there's a potential suicide ideation. Increased alcohol, increased drug usage, withdrawal from friends, withdrawal from family, withdrawal from community. Dramatic mood swings. They've gone from being intensely angry, intensely bitter, intensely talkative, moved away from the social butterfly, and now they are just the opposite. They've become more impulsive, more reckless behavior, giving away possessions that were once very dear to them, tying up loose ends, as I illustrated yesterday, just making sure that their insurance policy is paid up. They've said their goodbyes to family and friends. They've made amends to people, and you're saying, oh, all of that is so strange. It may very well be strange because it might be the individual preparing to do something suicidal. How do you know? Ask the individual, are you okay? Because your behaviors have been out of character with you. And I just need to ask you a question up front. I apologize in advance, but I need to ask you, are you contemplating suicide? You have to be very direct. Are you contemplating harming your body? Are you contemplating killing yourself? You have to use clarity words, because in that person's mind, if that is what's going on, they understand. And sometimes we don't want to hurt somebody's feeling. This is not the time to be feeling sensitive, because the person wants somebody to be in touch with their feelings, and they want somebody to notice that something is broken. They want someone to notice that they're operating out of character, and let them know that you care. Let them know that you are available at any time for them. If this is a person to person and they tell you, yes, I today's going to be my last day in this earth, do not leave them alone. If you're talking to them on the phone, keep them on the line. Uh, you may have to uh, do some finagling to where you're talking to them and you're texting. You're talking to them and you're sending an email to somebody else. If you have access to a home phone or a secondary line, keep them on the line until you call 911, and keep them talking. And when 911 gets to their place of abode, then disconnect. But you want to keep that individual connected to some source outside of himself and herself for as long as humanly possible. Thank you for being with me today in class. Let's close with a word of prayer. Father, we know that change is possible, but we also can see that sometimes change is a real struggle. Help us to change those things that improve our quality of life with you. Help us, Father, to be willing to admit to you that even in our brokenness, we trust you with who we are to make us better. Forgive us when we fail to acknowledge those broken pieces of our lives, those things that need improvement. Be merciful upon us. And yet we ask you to continue using us as your children. I pray that you will watch over Brother Deal, especially today. At GW Hospital, and probably is going to be dismissed later today, but he's getting the proper treatment, and we thank God for that. So continue to keep Sister Deal and the entire Deal family in your prayers. Also, today is Sister Dana Johnson's birthday, December 7th. Be sure to remember her birthday today. And one of our college students, Nadia Wutall, today is also her birthday. Uh, a bit of celebration other than birthdays. Earlier today, Sister Nicole Collins' son, Catrell, came by the building, and he and I had been talking. and he decided that today was the day for him to surrender his life over to the Lord. So we baptized him earlier today. So it's been a good day. It's been a busy day, but God is in control of our lives, and he makes every day a day worth living. Uh, be safe today. Be careful. Enjoy the fall-like weather, and I look forward to seeing you back in class again tomorrow at noon. God bless you. Have a great evening.